Oh, hey, I'm Joe Mack. Welcome back to the channel. Today, let's talk about YouTuber Daniel Greene's book, Neon Ghosts, Book 1, A Witch's Sin. So I guess first and foremost, I'd like to say that I was pretty impressed. I was surprised that the book was good. Um, I don't really know what I expected going into it. Daniel's obviously a good YouTuber and he speaks well. I imagine he write some sort of script for at least fantasy news. I know he's written a couple of stories before this for called The Lawful Times. I think it's Breach of Peace. I'm not sure what the other one's called, but I'll find pictures and put them somewhere on the screen for you guys to check them out on your own if you want. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with how this book went, and I was very impressed with the first half of the book. Not saying the back half was bad or anything. That's not foreshadowing. But the first half was pretty great. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is that this book presents itself as a supernatural cyberpunk story. And unapologetically so, it tells you that from the get-go. But for some reason, I didn't really latch on to the word supernatural going into it, but I did with the cover art and everything else going into it latch on to cyberpunk, and it delivers that. In fact, it excels at world building for the cyberpunk nature. I think that he did a great job depicting the world, the different wear that people have, being the cybernetic implants that they use, as well as his form of, I'm going to use cyberpunk 2077 language here, but his Ripper Doc and what he has as the character who performs those functions in this story. I think he did absolutely incredible describing the megastructure, and I think that as far as the cyberpunk nature went, he absolutely nailed it. Where things started to wane a little bit for me was when the vampires were introduced, and that was jarring at first, and then later when it got a little crazier and a little more fantastical with magic and witches, which is in the name of the book, so I shouldn't really have been that surprised. I think that I thought that maybe it was a play on words and not so literal. And it's not that he did a bad job with those things. I think for me as a reader, it was just a little jarring to see vampires, cyberpunk, and magic intertwined the way that it was, as well as religion and religious zealots and Mars referenced, and some sort of like his take on vampires is a little different, which I can't say until later when I delve a little bit into spoilers. I think Daniel did a pretty good job writing a female main character, and the book is told in the third person point of view perspective, and I think that that is was a good choice on his behalf. Most of the characters are relegated to severely to side character roles. A couple of them approach main side character status, but this is a tie-em-in story through and through. I think overall one of the weaker parts of the story, and one of the things that kind of stands out with Daniel's writing, and I think it's to be expected with his experience, is the dialogue. Overall, it's pretty average. It has those moments where it's a little cringy. I don't think it's terrible by any means. I think of everything that he did in this story, it just happens to be on the lower end. With that, one thing that I did enjoy with the dialogue is I did enjoy the inclusion of the text bubbles. I think that that really lent to the kind of story that he was telling, it being a cyberpunk story really at its core. And as far as the world building goes, I mean, that's what it is. It just has those other elements that bring it away from pure sci-fi into sci-fantasy. I didn't think that those were jarring. They really fit. And with knowing how a cyberpunk world would go and knowing that conversations would take place, mentally through a text kind of format, I thought that that was a really cool inclusion. And the way that it was put in print was really nice as well. And the last thing I want to talk about before I get into spoiler territory, which is where I have to go in order to really talk about the negatives of the book, is I wanted to give a shout out to the quality that the book was made, and that goes to Wraith Marked made this book, and it is a paperback book, the one that I got, but it has that flop to it, so you're not gonna crack the spine. The paperweight for the pages is thicker, and it's definitely of a higher quality. But the book felt amazing to read, and it's just something that I thought of a couple times while reading it. So I just wanted to comment on that. I think that even having thought it while reading it is worth at least mentioning to you guys. So yeah, high quality book for sure. I'm gonna do this book out of 10, and I'm gonna give Daniel Greene's Neon Ghosts a 6.5 out of 10. I had a good time reading it. I really did. I think that it was an above average book. I can't help but judge it on the fact that I know it's really his first full length novel that he's written. So I am probably a little more lenient on my scoring for that. I think that the back half of this book kind of took away some of those points and brought it further down on the scale. But I did have a good time. I think that needs to have credit given where credit's due. If 5 is going to be your average, I think that this is above that. But I think 7 starts to delve into really good, 8 being great, 9 being amazing, and 10 being perfect. So I think 6.5 is very fair. And I'm not trying to strengthen my parasocial relationship with him at all. I've never spoken to him. I am pretty sure he's not going to see this. So I think that's my true rating, 6.5. So with that being said, everything I'm going to say after this is I don't think I'm going to be able to stop myself from spoilers. So this is your spoiler warning. So I think that the things that really kind of brought me out of the story was just vampires in general. I got used to it after a little bit, and it was a cool thing to include. I think that the difference with his vampires to other vampires is pretty neat. Being like half possessed by a demon from a dead god on Mars is definitely like a wild take on it. I don't know. Obviously, this is, it's book 1, so it's going to be part of some sort of series. So who knows if that's going to be explored further. Having gone over it and touched on a little bit, but not being a main point of interest after that's revealed, I would have liked for it to have been explained a little bit more in this book. But that was like the first time I stumbled was when vampires showed up. I think it serves a good purpose. Vampires are the looked down upon people, and that is a point for the revolution and rebellion that's taking place in this world for equality. But the first time I stumbled was Cyberpunk Left Turn Vampires. After Vampires, and quite a while after Vampires, I think we're a little bit past the halfway point in this book, we get introduced to Jordan, who is a witch, which I feel like is another wild inclusion in this story. I definitely agree with probably what he was trying to do, which is to set his story apart from other cyberpunk stories by including these other elements. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's a wrong choice or a bad choice, but this is another point that I stumbled across, and it kind of took me out of that immersion, was trying to wrap my head around like the why and the how, I guess is what I'm saying. If you have all this technology and all this other stuff's been explored, the fact that these kinds of people would remain a secret was a little shocking to me. And obviously, in the story, the way that Taya Mint is shown that magic is real, having her whole experience when she meets Jordan, I don't know, just the way that Taya reacted after that just felt like she was accepting things a little too quickly, and it forced me to accept it just as quickly, and I didn't. Everything that comes after that, it just, I don't know, it's so hard for me to put into words. Just the whole inclusion of magic and the witches and some things, it didn't feel like it fit, is all I'm saying. Like the Crusaders have holy magic, or some other kind of magic, and those people know about the witches, and they're able to do some stuff, but it's also somehow all these people know it, but it's such a well-kept secret that it's not common knowledge, and in an age of information that this is obviously reached, for it to not be on the net in some way, shape, or form, or whatever the internet and stuff is called in this world slash timeline. It was hard for me to not continue the story. It was just hard for me to accept, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It broke my immersion a little bit, and we'll see how it works moving forward. Yeah. I don't know if this is necessarily a negative thing, but you can tell that Daniel definitely had some influence from Pierce Brown in the Red Rising series. And what I mean by that is, in this world, things are printed, right? Like 3D printers have gotten super good. They're making tons of materials, and the naming convention and the way that things are called is print with a lowercase p and iron as one word, so print iron, and it's lowercase p print, capital I. So whatever the material is capitalized, and it's the same way with grav boots and other such objects in the Red Rising universe. And this goes so far because that was happening that then when Jordan wanted Taya to be her Reaper, that made me think of it as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. To be influenced or to take inspiration from other things, because there's no such thing as an original idea, is totally fine. It was just something that I took note of while reading it. And I think that the print iron and that stuff, I think honestly that was a great choice, because it helps me as the reader become more easily immersed. It makes sense to call things that. I've said that about the Red Rising series, that I like the way that things are named. I know that it's a little divisive. Some people think that it's a cheap way of doing it, but I like it, and I think that it fits here as well. It makes sense that eventually something would be called that. And also, with that being said, the way that the religion and the magic and the witches are fighting each other, it also makes sense that if you want someone to be your weapon, you would call them a Reaper. So it's not really out of left field, and I might be reaching by making that comparison. So I might not even include this entire clip in the final video, because now I'm regretting commenting on it and feel like I'm almost forcing a point. So to summarize all my thoughts, I think the world building was a smashing success as far as the cyberpunk portion of the world goes. I like his take on vampires. I think that it's brave to include vampires, magic, witches, religious zealots, and all this stuff included on top of everything. I think it was very ambitious, and I'm not so sure he executed it as well as he wanted to. Executed it as well as he wanted to. However, at the end of the day, I did have a good time reading the book, and I will check out the next one. I'm interested enough to continue the story, so we'll see what happens with that. Have you read any of Daniel Greene's literary works yet? Have you checked out Neon Ghosts? Do you plan on reading any of Daniel Greene's or any booktubers' books that they put out? I know a bunch of them are coming out. J.A.J. Minton, which is Talking Story, just came out with Discovery. Will you be checking that out? Let me know. Get in those comments. Love you. Bye.